Welcome to my kitchen, which is completely irrelevant for today's video. I'm having a break from sewing, so it's a good time to chat. I've been having very modest fantasies about making a midi tier ruffle skirt recently. So I got some fabric and that's today's project. Design-wise, it's been a bit finger in the air. I have looked at 2 other people's tutorials for a maxi dress because I wanted to gauge how much fabric to buy and what ratio proportion of the tiers should be for a rough guide, and then I've done a bit of doing what I fancy and what feels right, going with the vibe and my measurements. So I've kind of come up with my own plan, which I will show you. It's very messy. The last project I did was with a pattern and it was quite arduous, to be honest, because I had to redo the pattern a few times and rework it, and then I still wasn't happy with the kind of final piece perfectly anyway. This project, I'm going a bit more easy breezy, flowy, doesn't really require a set pattern. I'm making my own. The measurements don't have to be precise. Material's quite forgiving. It's like a stretch fabric slightly. I'm hoping that it should be fun. Oh, and as well as it being a really easy project, I also wanted it to be really comfy. So it's very loose, it's very flowy, and also I've done an elasticated waistband because also it doesn't need to be precise then, but it's super comfy. Honestly, when I went to the fabric shop yesterday, it didn't have really anything that I wanted for any of the projects that I actually had planned. So I let the fabric they had in stock guide me. It was a bit of an impromptu, spontaneous, work it out as I go along purchase and hope for the best. So I just bought 3 meters because I knew I wanted to make a skirt, so I knew I'd need quite a lot of fabric, and I might make a top too if I've got enough left over, but it's going to be a bit of an experiment testing the DIY pattern, and I've kind of researched it after I bought the fabric, which probably wasn't the smartest move either. My god, I actually can't believe how much fabric I'm using. But here's all of the skirt pieces laid out, and my god, that is a lot of fabric. You can see I've actually changed over to a dark green thread, which I've got loads of, to do the basting stitch, and that is because I've got to do almost like meters and meters of basting stitch, and I don't want to waste the nice sage khaki green that I've got. So this is my workaround for doing a cheap version that hopefully will mean I will not run out of the matching thread for my fabric. I've started pulling on the basting stitch and kind of got it ish even. So I'm just going to firstly right sides together, flip it, and then also line up my seams and my center and quarter notches, and then have a play about with the ruffly bits. Hello! So I am incredibly sorry because it is actually 2 weeks later. So I did a dreadful job at continuing to film basically around my, life. But I have got a finished skirt, which is so exciting. I'm really happy with it actually. Really happy with it. So I'll give you a little show of what it looks like on, and I will also talk you how I finished it off as well, and how I kind of came up with the proportions and the design, because I'm really happy with it and it seemed to work out pretty well. So I don't see why it's not repeatable, because it's just copy-ish for your measurements and then it kind of works, hopefully. So here is my design plan, which it's messy, sorry, and I couldn't be bothered, to be honest, to draw it out pretty just for this. It's authentically shit, sorry, but this is basically what my brain needed to get down on paper to work it out. And so I knew I was going to need to do 6 rectangles of fabric. I wanted 3 tiers, and then for the kind of proportions width-wise, from a little bit of like research and looking at other people's patterns, which I will try and link below if I can remember it, that I wanted the first tier to be, including the waistband, to be my waist measurements times 2 for a nice bit of scrunch, but not too much fabric there. For tier 2 then, I did my waist measurement times 3. And then for tier 3, I did my waist measurement times 5. And that is each with my, the waist measurement times 5, and then cut into half for a back and a front, plus then seam allowance on each of the 2 sides. Obviously, by that point, it seemed like a hell of a lot of fabric, but kind of trust the process. For the heights then, this is probably where I am not 100% sure whether I nailed it, but I'm still pretty happy and I'm really liking it and I'll wear it. Because I think I probably should have done slightly more in my tier 1 and slightly less in my tier 3. But I did also kind of decide to do it in that kind of a long tier 3, shorter tier 1 and 2, because I'm quite long in the body, but then shorter in the legs, weirdly proportioned. So I kind of wanted my body to seem shorter, but my legs to seem longer and balance me out a little bit. That was the plan anyway, but I think I took it too far. And I also did that by measuring my leg height, my waist to where I wanted it on my ankle. I kind of went for more of like a midi than a maxi length. That was kind of 85 centimeters. So adding seam allowance obviously onto each tier, plus then an added section for the waistband, and that of course depended on the elastic that I bought. So I just measured the elastic, the width of the elastic that I bought, doubled that for each side, a little bit of room for error, plus the seam allowance to then roll it up inside so that I didn't have a raw edge. And I kind of got there, but it all took a bit of math, but I quite liked that. Yeah, I feel like it worked, which is really, really wild. And it's really comfy. The only thing that actually I did have to retrospectively change and do, I kind of felt like the fabric was a little bit too transparent. You can kind of, I don't think it'll show here, but you can kind of see that it's quite sheer in some lights when it's in sunlight. So I did actually do an added lining stage. I added almost like a tube inside, and it was a bit rough and ready, to be honest, because I added it retrospectively, so it's not all nicely put in inside the seam. It's an added tacked on extra on top of the seam, which honestly is actually fine. It works, it fits, you'd never know when I wear it. So I think I'm quite happy with it the way it is. My only concern is the fabric has a slight stretch to it, and it also has quite a lot of weight. By the time I've done the 3 tiers and added a kind of inner section as well, it's actually quite weighty. So my only concern is whether that long term will kind of stretch the tiers down or anything like that. I'm not sure, but I guess time will tell, and it'll be perfectly fine for the moment, hopefully. I just did a basic seam on the bottom on the very last tier, which I was actually quite chuffed with. I thought it was quite straight, so I was happy. Yeah, overall, I'd really, really recommend this project. Look at that. That's a straight line, that. My 3 tiers lined up. Ruffles are fairly even in ruffliness. Honestly, I'd highly recommend, if you fancy a maxi skirt, elasticated waistband, buy a bit of elastic, lots of fabric. Good luck to you. I really enjoyed this project. It was not stressful at all, because I kind of just figured, oh well, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. It's just me making it up as I go along with a bit of, research, and it was fun. It was a really nice beginner project, and I love the finished piece to actually wear. So highly, highly recommend. Let me know if there's anything that you're going to do differently, if you fancy making it, what you think of my version, and honestly, if you've got any tips on best ways to add a lining in, either into the design or retrospectively. I probably haven't done the best job. Tips and tricks welcome. Let me know. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.